There's a specific kind of fear that comes from hearing something beautiful in a place where nothing should be singing. That's what I learned the hard way during a camping trip in northern Minnesota's Boundary Waters. My name is Jordan, and what I heard in those woods rewrote my understanding of what safety means. It was late July, peak camping season, but I'd managed to get a permit for one of the more remote areas. I was with my brother Kyle and his wife Megan. We'd planned a 5-day canoe camping trip, portaging between lakes, the kind of adventure where you might not see another person for days. The first 3 days were incredible, glassy lakes reflecting perfect skies, loons calling at sunset, the northern lights dancing overhead. We felt like we'd found paradise. On the 4th night, we made camp on a small island, barely 2 acres of rock and pine. It was the kind of spot that felt protected, surrounded by water on all sides. Nothing could reach us there. That's what we thought. We were sitting around the fire after dinner when we heard it. A woman's voice, distant but clear, singing a lullaby. The melody was haunting and beautiful, something old-fashioned, the kind of song your grandmother might have sung. At first, I thought it was coming from another campsite across the water. Sound carries weirdly over lakes at night, but the nearest permitted campsite was miles away. Kyle stood up, listening. That's really close. He was right. The voice was coming from our island, somewhere in the trees behind us. Megan grabbed a flashlight and swept it across the darkness. The beam caught nothing but tree trunks and shadows. The singing continued, never pausing for breath, never changing tempo. It was hypnotic in a way that made my skin crawl. "Hello," Kyle called out. The singing stopped. For about 5 seconds, there was only the sound of water lapping against rocks. Then it started again, but closer now. Much closer. And there was something wrong with it. The voice was too perfect. No warble. No human imperfection. It sounded like a recording playing through a speaker. We stood frozen as the singing moved through the trees, circling our campsite. It would come from the left, then shift to the right, then behind us, always staying just beyond the reach of our flashlights. Whatever was making that sound was moving faster than any person could walk through that terrain. Kyle grabbed our camp knife, and I picked up a paddle. Megan stayed close to the fire, her flashlight tracking the source of the sound. Then we saw her, a woman in a white dress, standing at the edge of our camp. She was facing away from us, her long dark hair hanging down her back, and she was singing. The lullaby poured from her without her mouth moving, because we could see her reflection in the water behind her, and in the reflection, her mouth was sewn shut. We didn't move, didn't breathe. The woman slowly turned to face us, and what I saw made my vision blur. Her face was wrong, features in the right places, but slightly off, like a drawing done by someone who'd never actually seen a human face. Her eyes were too large, too dark, and when she smiled, her mouth split wider than any mouth should. She continued singing, and I realized the sound wasn't coming from her. It was coming from all around us, from the trees, from the rocks, from the water itself. The island was singing. Kyle took a step backward, and the woman mimicked him. Same motion, same timing. He took another step. She matched it. Then Megan moved, and the woman's head snapped toward her with a sound like cracking wood. The singing stopped. In the silence, we heard breathing. Not from the woman. She wasn't breathing. It was coming from under the ground, from beneath our feet. Deep, slow breaths, like something massive sleeping just below the surface. The woman in white raised her arm and pointed at our tent. Then she spoke, but her voice was Megan's voice. Perfect. Exact. Come inside. You must be tired. Come inside and sleep. Megan went pale. The woman tilted her head, her neck bending at an impossible angle, and repeated it. Come inside and sleep. The children are waiting. That's when we heard them. Children's voices singing the lullaby, coming from inside our tent. We hadn't brought children. There were no children on the island. Kyle grabbed his paddle and charged the woman. She didn't run. She simply dissolved, her form breaking apart into white mist that flowed around Kyle and reformed behind him. Now she was between us and our canoe. We were cut off. The children's singing grew louder, more insistent, and our tent began to shake. Something was inside it, multiple somethings, moving and pressing against the fabric from within. I made a decision. The water. We swim. It was our only option. The nearest shore was maybe 300 yards away, far in cold water, but possible. Without discussion, we ran for the rocks on the opposite side of the island from the woman. Behind us, I heard her voice multiplying, overlapping, dozens of Megans speaking in unison. Don't leave. The children are waiting. The children are hungry. We dove into the black water, the shock of cold stealing our breath. I swam harder than I've ever swam in my life, my clothes dragging at me, my legs already cramping. Behind us, the island lit up, not with firelight, with a soft, white glow emanating from every tree, every rock. The singing resumed, but now it was coming from under the water. I felt something brush past my leg. Then again, and again, things were swimming with us. I didn't look down. I couldn't. I just kept swimming. Kyle reached the shore first and pulled himself onto the rocks. He turned to help Megan, and I saw his face go slack with horror. Jordan swam faster. I didn't ask why. I just swam. When I finally reached the rocks and Kyle hauled me out, I looked back at the island. The woman in white was standing at the water's edge, and surrounding her were children, dozens of them, all in pale nightgowns, all with the same wrong faces. They were holding hands, forming a line along the shore, and they were singing. As I watched, more shapes emerged from the forest behind them. Adults, all in white, all with sewn mouths and two large eyes. The entire island was full of them. They'd been there the whole time, sleeping beneath the ground, waiting for someone to camp above them. We hiked through the night, following the shoreline in the dark, too terrified to stop. At dawn, we found another camper's site and collapsed, telling them we'd lost our gear in a tipping accident. They gave us coffee and emergency blankets and paddled us to the nearest ranger station. We never reported what really happened. Who would believe us? But I did some research afterward. Found old newspaper articles from the 1890s about a religious community that had lived on one of the Boundary Waters Islands. They believed that children who died before baptism were trapped between worlds, unable to find rest. The community performed ceremonies to call them home, singing lullabies every night, trying to summon the lost children so they could save them. One winter, the entire community disappeared. 43 people gone without a trace. Their belongings were found. Their boats were still on shore, but they were never seen again. I think they found what they were looking for, or had found them, and now they sing every night, calling to anyone who camps above them, trying to add more voices to their choir. I still hear that lullaby sometimes, late at night when I'm alone. The melody creeps into my head unbidden, and I catch myself humming it. Each time it happens, I remember the woman in white, remember her too wide smile, and I wonder if part of me is still on that island, singing with the others, waiting for the next camper to hear the beautiful song and come closer, because that's what it wants. That's what it's always wanted. More voices, more singers, an endless choir calling across the dark water, luring the lost and the curious. And I'm terrified that one night, I'll wake up standing at the edge of a lake, singing that lullaby, unable to stop. Some places demand tribute, not because they're sacred, but because something lives there that requires payment. I'm Ethan, and 3 years ago in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas, I found out what happens when you camp in such a place without paying the toll. I was doing a solo hiking trip through the Buffalo National River area, one of those journeys where you push yourself to see how much solitude you can handle. I'd been on the trail for 4 days and was deep into the backcountry when I found the campsite. It was perfect, a flat clearing beside a creek, a natural fire ring made of stones, even a stack of dried wood already gathered. That should have been my first warning. Who leaves a perfect campsite abandoned? But I was tired, and the sun was setting, and I convinced myself another hiker had simply moved on. I dropped my pack and started to set up. That's when I noticed a stone. It was in the center of the clearing, about waist-high, flat on top like a table. Dark stains covered its surface, and arranged around its base were objects. Small things. A watch, a pocket knife, a compass, a wedding ring, all weathered and old, some covered in rust. Offerings. I should have recognized what I was looking at. Should have left immediately. But instead, I examined each item, trying to understand what they were doing there. Were they lost and found items? Memorial tokens? The stone itself was wrong too. It wasn't native to the area. It was granite, smooth and polished, completely out of place among the sandstone and limestone of the Ozarks. Someone had brought it here, placed it deliberately. I was still examining the offerings when I heard footsteps, heavy boots on gravel. I stood up quickly, relieved to see another person. An old man emerged from the tree line, stooped and weathered, wearing clothes that looked decades out of date. He stopped when he saw me, his face going pale. "You're camping here?" His voice was rough, urgent. I nodded. "Bad luck to camp here without an offering. Very bad luck. You need to leave something on the stone." He pointed at the granite table with a gnarled finger. "Something valuable. Something that matters to you. Before full dark." I laughed nervously. "Is this some local tradition? Like a trail superstition?" He didn't smile. "Son, I've lived in these mountains 78 years. I know what I'm talking about. This clearing belongs to something old. Older than the United States. Older than the tribes that were here first. You leave an offering, it lets you stay. You don't." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Just trust me. Leave something. I come by every few weeks to check. Make sure the stone has what it needs. But it prefers fresh offerings. From the person staying here." I thanked him for the advice, tried to keep my tone respectful, but inside I was writing him off as a superstitious local trying to scare the tourist. He left, disappearing back into the trees, and I set up my tent. I didn't leave an offering. I had nothing I wanted to part with, and I wasn't going to enable some weird local mythology. That was my second mistake. My first was staying at all. Night fell fast in the mountains. One moment there was twilight. The next I was surrounded by darkness. I built a fire and cooked dinner, trying to ignore the stone. But I kept glancing at it. In the firelight, the stains on its surface looked fresher, darker, almost wet. Around midnight, I heard something moving in the forest. Not the scurrying of small animals, something large, circling the clearing. I grabbed my flashlight and swept a beam across the trees. Nothing. The movement stopped. Then I heard it from a different direction. Then another. Multiple sources, all circling, getting closer. My fire was dying down, the embers glowing orange. I fed it more wood, built it back up, and the circling stopped. Whatever was out there was staying just beyond the light. I sat with my back to the stone, facing the fire, and tried to stay calm. This was normal. Animals were curious. They'd investigate and move on. But hours passed, and they didn't leave. I could hear breathing in the darkness. Heavy, multiple sources. And occasionally, I'd hear something else, a low clicking sound, like stones being struck together. Communication. Around 3 in the morning, something walked into the light. Not an animal, a person, or something shaped like a person. It was naked, its skin mottled in gray, covered in symbols that looked burned into the flesh, the same symbols that decorated the offering stone. Its head was wrong, elongated, with a face that seemed to have too many features in too many wrong places. It walked stiffly toward the stone, its movements mechanical. When it reached the offerings, it knelt and began to examine each item, picking them up, turning them over, and setting them back down. It moved to the watch, sniffed it, then lifted it to its mouth and bit down. The metal crushed like tin foil between its teeth. It swallowed, then picked up the ring and consumed that too. It was eating the offerings. After finishing the ring, it stood and turned toward me, even without real eyes, just dark hollows where I should be. I felt its gaze. It opened its mouth, and a sound came out, grinding, scraping, like rocks being dragged across metal. It was speaking, or trying to. The sound resolved into a single word, repeated. Pay, pay, pay. I fumbled for my backpack, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unzip it. What did I have? What could I give? The thing stepped closer, its mouth still moving, that horrible grinding voice demanding payment. I grabbed the first valuable thing I touched, my phone. It was an iPhone, expensive, barely 6 months old. I held it up. Here, take it. The thing's head tilted, considering. Then it moved closer, reaching out with hands that had too many fingers. It took the phone from me, turned it over, examining it. Then it bit down. Sparks flew as the screen shattered. The battery erupted, and it chewed methodically, swallowing plastic and glass and circuitry. When it finished, it looked at me again. Not enough. Behind it, more figures emerged from the darkness. 6 of them, all similar, all with the same burned symbols covering their bodies. They formed a semicircle around the fire, cutting off my escape routes. The first one spoke again. Not enough. You owe more. What more did I have? My gear was cheap. My clothes were old. The only other thing of value, my stomach dropped. My grandmother's necklace. A silver chain with a small locket. The only thing I had left of her. I wore it every day, tucked under my shirt. The thing's head turned toward my chest, as if it could sense it. Pay. I pulled the necklace out, held it in my hand. My grandmother had given it to me before she died, made me promise to keep it safe. Tears burned in my eyes. Please, anything else. I'll leave you money, credit cards, anything. The things didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, waiting. I unclasped the necklace with shaking hands and placed it on the offering stone. Immediately, the creatures moved. They converged on the stone, 6 hands reaching for the necklace. They fought over it, pulling and snarling, until the largest one claimed it. It held the necklace up to what passed for its face, studied it, then wrapped it around its wrist like a bracelet. It looked at me one final time and nodded. Then they left, all of them, fading back into the forest like smoke. I packed up camp in 10 minutes, using just my flashlight. I hiked through the dark, didn't stop until I reached a road at dawn. A ranger found me sitting on the side of the highway, still shaking. I told him I'd gotten lost, needed a ride to my car. He drove me back, asking questions I barely answered. When we passed the trailhead, I saw the old man again. He was standing at the edge of the parking lot, watching me. Our eyes met, and he nodded slowly. He knew. He tried to warn me. I drove home and didn't camp again for a year. But the story doesn't end there. 6 months later, I received a package at my apartment. No return address. Inside was my grandmother's necklace. The silver was tarnished black, and the locket had been pried open. Inside, where there had once been a tiny photo of my grandmother, there was now a photo of me, sleeping in my tent, taken from above, as if something had been hovering directly over me, and written on the back in scratchy handwriting, "The debt is never truly paid." I burned the necklace, threw the package away, changed apartments, but every few months I received something else. Small items I've lost or misplaced. A pen, a sock, a grocery receipt, all delivered to wherever I'm living, no matter how many times I move. And each one comes with a photo. Me at work, me at the gym, me sleeping. They're still watching, still waiting, and I know that one day they'll decide the debt isn't balanced, that I owe more, and when that day comes, no offering I make will be enough. Because some places don't want your money or your possessions. They want something deeper, something permanent, And once they've marked you as owing, you're never truly free. I still hear that grinding voice sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone. Just one word echoing in my head: pay. Water can be a mirror, but not all mirrors show you what's really there. Some show you what's waiting. I'm Vanessa, and 4 years ago in Colorado's San Juan Mountains, I looked into the wrong lake and saw something looking back, something that wanted out. I was camping with my girlfriend Paige at a remote alpine lake, one of those pristine spots you have to hike 6 miles and gain 2,000 feet of elevation to reach. We'd done the hike before, loved the area, and decided to spend a long weekend there. The lake was called Mirror Lake on the maps, fitting because on calm days, it reflected the surrounding peaks so perfectly you couldn't tell where the mountains ended and their reflections began. We set up camp on the north shore, right at the tree line. The first day was beautiful. Clear skies, warm sun, that thin mountain air that makes everything feel more intense. Paige went for a swim while I fished from the shore. The water was incredibly clear, and I could see straight down to the rocky bottom 20 feet below. That's when I noticed something odd. The rocks at the bottom formed patterns. Not natural patterns, deliberate ones. Circles and lines, like something had arranged them. I pointed it out to Paige. She dove down to get a closer look, surfaced, and shrugged. Probably just coincidence. You know how people see faces in clouds. She was probably right, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was looking at something intentional. That night, we sat by the fire and watched the stars emerge. The lake was perfectly still, not even a ripple, and the reflection of the night sky was so vivid it felt like we were suspended between two universes. Paige went to bed around 11, but I stayed up, feeding the fire, enjoying the solitude. Around midnight, I walked down to the water's edge to refill our water bottles. I knelt on a flat rock that jetted out into the lake and dipped the first bottle in. As I pulled it back up, I looked at my reflection in the water, and my reflection looked back. That sounds normal, I know, but what I mean is, it looked at me differently than I was looking at it. My head was tilted down, looking at the water. My reflection's head was tilted up, looking at my face. We weren't mirroring each other. For a second, we just stared at each other, and then my reflection smiled. Not the kind of smile I'd make. Something else. Something that knew things I didn't. I jerked backward, and the water rippled, breaking the image. I stood there, heart hammering, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Trick of the moonlight. Exhaustion. Oxygen deprivation from the altitude. I went back to the fire and tried to calm down, but for the rest of the night, I felt watched. Like something in the lake was aware of me, tracking my movements. At dawn, Paige woke up and found me still sitting by the fire, staring at the water. "Did you sleep at all?" I told her what I'd seen. She laughed, not unkindly, and suggested I'd dozed off and had a dream. I wanted to believe her. We spent the second day hiking around the lake, exploring the area. The feeling of being watched persisted, but nothing strange happened. No weird reflections. No unexplained sounds. By evening, I'd almost convinced myself it had been nothing. We made dinner and settled in for the night. But around 2 in the morning, I woke to voices. Multiple voices, whispering. I sat up in the tent and listened. The voices were coming from outside, from the direction of the lake. I unzipped the tent quietly and looked out. The lake's surface was glowing, not reflecting moonlight, emitting its own soft, blue-white luminescence. And standing at the water's edge were figures, 8 or 9 of them, shadowy and indistinct, facing the lake like they were worshiping it. I woke Paige up. She looked out and went completely silent. We watched the figures for maybe 5 minutes. They didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, perfectly still, facing the glowing water. Then, as one, they stepped forward and walked into the lake. They didn't swim. They walked, sinking down as if descending a staircase, until the water closed over their heads. The glow faded. The lake returned to normal darkness, Paige and I sat in the tent, too scared to speak, waiting for dawn. When morning came, we were exhausted and rattled. "We should leave," Paige said. I agreed. We started packing up camp, moving quickly, wanting to be on the trail as soon as possible. As I was stuffing my sleeping bag, I heard Paige call my name from near the water. Her voice sounded strange, distant. I walked down to the shore and found her standing at the same rock where I'd seen my reflection the first night. She was staring into the water, motionless. "Paige," she didn't respond. I moved closer and saw what she was looking at. Her reflection, but it wasn't mimicking her. It was standing in a different position, gesturing, beckoning, and behind the reflection, in the water, there were more figures, dozens of them, standing beneath the surface, looking up at us. Paige stepped back. I grabbed her arm and pulled. She resisted. Her eyes locked on the water. "They're calling me. Can't you hear them?" I couldn't hear anything. I pulled harder, and she stumbled backward, breaking eye contact with the water. The moment she looked away, she gasped like she'd been holding her breath. What just happened? She didn't remember staring at the water, didn't remember the voices she claimed to have heard. I told her we were leaving immediately, no discussion. We grabbed our packs, not bothering to properly pack everything, and started hiking. But as we walked away from the lake, I made the mistake of looking back. At the water's edge, standing in the exact spot where Paige had been, was a figure. It looked exactly like her. Same clothes, same hair, same posture. And next to it was another figure. It looked exactly like me. Our reflections had climbed out of the water. They stood side by side, watching us leave, their faces expressionless. And as we rounded a bend and lost sight of the lake, I saw them turn and walk back toward the water, toward our abandoned campsite. We hiked for 4 hours straight, didn't stop until we reached the trailhead. We drove to the nearest town and checked into a motel. That night, Paige woke up screaming. She dreamed she was underwater, surrounded by faces pressed against an invisible barrier, all trying to tell her something. She said they were trapped, that the lake wasn't water, it was a door, and something on our side had the key. We left Colorado the next day, drove straight back to California and tried to forget. But 3 weeks later, Paige disappeared. She left a note saying she had to go back, that the voices were getting louder, that she needed to help them. I called the police, filed a missing person report. They found her car at the Mirror Lake trailhead. They searched for 2 weeks. They never found her body. The lake was drained as part of the search effort, a difficult and expensive operation, but her family insisted. You know what they found at the bottom? Nothing. No body. No camping gear. Just those arranged rocks, forming a pattern that, when viewed from above, looked like a door. A door with the handle on the wrong side. I still get phone calls sometimes. Middle of the night. Unknown numbers. When I answer, all I hear is water. Gurgling, rushing water, and beneath it a voice. Paige's voice. Whispering, "It's not so bad here, Vanessa. It's actually beautiful. You should see it. You should come see it." I've blocked dozens of numbers. Doesn't matter. The calls keep coming. And last week, I saw something that made me realize she's right. I should go see it. Because I was washing my hands in the bathroom sink, looked up at the mirror, and saw her standing behind me. Not a reflection, she was wet, her hair plastered to her face, her eyes hollow and dark. She placed a hand on my shoulder. I felt pressure, real physical pressure. I spun around. Nothing. But in the mirror, she was still there, still touching me. She smiled. That same smile my reflection had given me 4 years ago, and mouthed 4 words. The door is open. I haven't looked in a mirror since. I've covered every reflective surface in my apartment. I avoid windows at night, but it doesn't matter. I can feel her getting closer, feel something pulling at me, like a current dragging me toward deep water. And I know that soon, I'll wake up standing at the edge of some body of water, staring at my reflection. And this time, My reflection won't let me walk away, because some doors, once open, can't be closed. And what waits on the other side doesn't need your permission. It just needs you to look, just needs you to see. And once you've seen, you belong to it. You always have.